A German shepherd rescues an abandoned baby in the middle of the freezing woods. But what happens next made everyone cry. A lonely veteran finds himself holding a newborn that shouldn't have survived, and what starts as a miracle turns into a battle against a system that wants to rip her away. But there's something no one knows about this baby, something that could destroy reputations, expose buried secrets, and change one man's life forever. As powerful forces close in and the truth begins to unravel, one question hangs in the air. Why was this baby left to die? And what will it cost to save her? You being here is a reminder. The quiet acts of love and kindness still matter. If you hold space for compassion, you're already part of this community. The December wind whistled through the bare trees, carrying a bitter chill that made Truman Bell pull his worn military jacket tighter around his shoulders. At 52, his morning routine hadn't changed much since his days in the service. Up before dawn, coffee black as night, and a careful check on Valor, his retired military working dog. The German shepherd had been more than just a partner during their tours in Afghanistan. After losing Sarah, his wife of 23 years, to cancer 2 years ago, Valor became Truman's sole companion in their modest home nestled in the Kentucky countryside. This morning, though, something was different. The familiar scratch of Valor's paws against his kennel floor was absent. Truman's boots crunched on frost-covered grass as he rounded the corner of the house. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the kennel door hanging open, the latch somehow worked loose. "Valor!" Truman's voice echoed across the silent property. This wasn't like his well-trained companion at all. The dog had never run off before, not once in their 8 years together. Fresh paw prints in the frozen earth led toward the dense forest behind their property. Truman's military instincts kicked in as he grabbed a flashlight and his emergency pack. Old habits die hard. His mind raced with worry. Had Valor experienced a PTSD episode? It happens sometimes with service dogs, just like their human counterparts. Following the tracks deeper into the woods, Truman called out periodically, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The weak winter sun barely penetrated the canopy of bare branches overhead. After 15 minutes of careful tracking, he heard it, Valor's distinctive bark, urgent and demanding. "I'm coming, boy!" Truman quickened his pace, pushing through thorny undergrowth. He found Valor circling a collapsed hunting blind, pawing at the ground and whining with unusual intensity. Truman's trained eyes quickly assessed the scene. The blind had partially caved in, its canvas torn, and wooden supports splintered. But it was Valor's behavior that sent chills down his spine. The dog was using his nose to gently push aside debris, the same way he'd been trained to locate survivors in combat zones. "What have you got, boy?" Truman knelt beside his faithful companion, pushing away rotting leaves and broken branches. His hand brushed against something soft. His heart nearly stopped when he realized what it was, a tiny human hand, cold as ice. With trembling fingers, Truman carefully cleared away more debris. There, wrapped in nothing but a thin blanket, lay a newborn baby girl. Her skin had taken on a bluish tinge, and for one horrifying moment, Truman thought they were too late. Then he saw it, the faintest movement of her chest, a tiny flutter of life holding on against impossible odds. "Dear God," he whispered, immediately shrugging off his jacket. He wrapped the infant carefully, cradling her close to his chest. The baby was so small, couldn't have been more than a few hours old. His military training took over, pushing aside the shock and questions flooding his mind. "Good boy, Valor." "Good boy," he praised, already turning back toward civilization. The dog fell in step beside him as Truman began to run, his boots pounding against the frozen ground. Every second counted now. The nearest hospital was 12 miles away in town. Truman's truck was parked back at the house, a good mile through the woods. He held the baby close, trying to share what warmth he could as he ran. Valor led the way, as if understanding the urgency of their mission. "Hold on, little one," Truman murmured to the bundle in his arms. "Just hold on." His heart pounded with each step, prayers mixing with memories of combat rescues, of lives saved and lost. But this was different. This tiny life, abandoned in the wilderness, found by a dog who'd already saved so many lives during his service. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him as heavily as the cold morning air in his lungs. Someone had left this child to die, but fate, or something greater, had sent Valor to find her. Now it was up to them to make sure she survived. The fluorescent lights of Kentucky Regional Hospital cast harsh shadows across Truman's face as he paced the emergency room waiting area. His boots left muddy tracks on the linoleum floor, but none of the staff seemed to mind. Valor sat alertly by an empty chair, his eyes never leaving his master. "Mr. Bell?" A nurse with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes approached him. Her name tag read Bonnie Clay, RN. "The baby is responding to treatment. We've got her temperature up, and she's breathing well on her own now." Truman's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank God," he whispered, running a trembling hand through his graying hair. "Will she make it?" "She's fighting hard," Bonnie assured him, gesturing for him to sit. "Dr. Matthews says she couldn't have been out there more than 6 or 8 hours, any longer." She shook her head, leaving the grim possibility unspoken. 2 police officers entered the waiting room, their faces serious. The older one, his badge identifying him as Detective Roberts, approached Truman. "Mr. Bell, we need to ask you some questions about where you found the infant." For the next hour, Truman recounted every detail while the officers took notes. He described the collapsed hunting blind, its location, and Valor's unusual behavior. Detective Roberts nodded grimly. "Based on preliminary evidence, we believe this was a case of teen pregnancy abandonment," the detective explained. "We see these cases more often than we'd like. Once the baby is stable, she'll be placed in emergency foster care until we can locate the mother or arrange permanent placement." Something inside Truman's chest tightened. The thought of this tiny survivor disappearing into the system made his heart ache. "What if—" he started, then cleared his throat. "What if I wanted to take her?" The detective and Nurse Clay exchanged surprised looks. "Mr. Bell," Detective Roberts began carefully, "the process isn't that simple. There are procedures, evaluations, home studies." "I don't care," Truman interrupted, his voice firm. "That little girl fought to survive, and Valor and I found her for a reason. I'm not walking away." Bonnie Clay studied him thoughtfully. "You have no legal standing right now," she said gently. "The system has strict protocols." "Then I'll follow them," Truman insisted. He stood up, his military bearing evident in his straight spine and determined expression. "That baby needs someone to fight for her. I've named her Grace, because that's what saved her life today." "Mr. Bell," Detective Roberts started to protest, but Truman cut him off. "I'm a widower with a stable home. I served my country honorably for 20 years as a military mechanic. I have a pension, savings, and plenty of love to give." His voice cracked slightly. "My wife and I couldn't have children of our own. Maybe this is why." Bonnie touched his arm sympathetically. "The road ahead won't be easy," she warned. "There's mountains of red tape, and no guarantees." "I understand," Truman nodded. "But I'm not giving up on Grace. She's already survived impossible odds. Now it's my turn to prove I deserve to be her father." Through the window of the nursery they could see the tiny bundle in the incubator, pink now instead of blue, fighting for every breath. Valor sat at attention, his eyes fixed on the same spot, as if he'd already accepted his new mission, protecting the precious life he'd discovered in the woods. Detective Roberts made some final notes in his notebook. "I'll have to report this to Child Protective Services. They'll be in touch about temporary placement options and next steps." Truman barely heard him. His focus remained on Grace, his heart already committed to whatever battles lay ahead. The morning's quiet routine had transformed into a life-changing mission, and he was ready to face it head-on. Truman Bell stood outside the family court, nerves swirling in his stomach like a storm. He had come as prepared as he could be, having spent countless hours gathering documentation. Yet, as he inhaled the stark scent of clean paper and sharpened pencils, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Today could change everything for him and for Grace, the baby he had promised to protect. Inside the courtroom, there was a palpable tension. Truman's heart raced as he glanced at the ornate wood paneling, the polished brass fixtures, and the distant sounds of murmured conversations. It felt too grand, too overwhelming for a case like his. He was just a widowed mechanic, a fighter for a baby he had only known for a few short days. But Grace was worth fighting for. She was worth everything. As he took a seat at the plaintiff's table, he caught sight of the opposing side. A well-dressed couple sat there, Danny and Darlene Wells. They were in their 40s, and their rich clothes gleamed as if polished with pride. Truman knew they were backed by the local elite. The Wells had been trying to adopt for years, but had faced betrayal after betrayal, making them all the more determined to take Grace from him. Anger flared within him. It felt deeply unfair. He had saved her life, yet here they were, ready to take her away. A few moments later, a door swung open and Judge Orrin Caulfield entered the room. The judge was respected, but Truman sensed the man's political ambitions too. Caulfield was looking to make a name for himself, and showing favor to the wealthy couple might offer him more votes down the line. The judge took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and peered over the rim at Truman and the Wells. "Good morning, everyone," Judge Caulfield said, his voice neither warm nor cold. "This is the case regarding the custody of infant Grace Bell." Truman's heart sank at the formal use of his last name. A court clerk began reading the particulars, and Truman listened, trying to drown out the noise in his head. If only he could rewind time to that moment in the woods when Valor had led him to Grace. As she gripped Truman's hand tightly, Valor whined softly, sensing his master's unease. Truman looked down at the service dog and whispered, "We can do this, buddy. We'll show them what we're made of." Valor sniffed in response, a reassurance that bolstered Truman's spirit. Judge Caulfield turned his attention to the Wells. "Mr. and Mrs. Wells, I understand you wish to adopt Grace. What makes you suitable guardians for her?" Darlene's voice was smooth and persuasive, like silk. "Your Honor, we have the means to provide for her every need. Education, opportunities, love. We've been waiting for a child for so long. We can give Grace the life she deserves." Truman clenched his fists under the table. A life she deserved? They didn't know the first thing about what Grace needed. He was about to stand up and argue, but recognized that attacking their character could be detrimental to his case. "Thank you. And Mr. Bell, what is your case for custody?" Judge Caulfield turned his steely eyes on Truman. Taking a deep breath, he stood up. "Your Honor, I found Grace in the woods, abandoned. I saved her life. I may not have a lot of money, but I have a home filled with love, and I will do everything in my power to care for her." "Love is not enough," the judge replied sharply. "You are a military man without legal ties to the child. What do you have to offer besides a lonely rural life? The county will look out for Grace. What assurances can you provide that she will not experience trauma often associated with a life in the woods?" Truman felt as if the judge had hit him. He swallowed hard. "I can provide stability. I have a job, a home, and I've formed a bond with Grace in the few days we've spent together," he replied with determination. "And I have Valor. He is a service dog, trained to bring comfort and safety." Valor nudged Truman's leg as if understanding every word. Judge Caulfield raised a skeptical eyebrow, but remained silent, jotting something down. The hearing continued, with voices rising and falling like waves crashing on a shore. Testimonies from women in social work recounted how the state typically handled cases like Grace's. Then the Wells presented their case, emphasizing their wealth and social connections. Darlene said, "We can give Grace experiences that a rural life cannot. We can travel, and she will have access to the best schools." Truman felt the despair creeping in again. Still, he pressed on, reminding himself of why he was there. There was a fire in his belly that wouldn't die. "Your Honor, I understand that I'm not rich," he insisted, his voice steady. "But wealth is not the only currency in this world. Grace is my priority, I promise to give her every ounce of my heart." Finally, the judge raised his hands for silence. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating. Truman's stomach twisted. The verdict felt ominous. "I have considered all factors, Mr. Bell. Unfortunately, due to your lack of established connection to Grace, I must deny your custody request. She will be placed with the Wells. They have the resources and stability that can best meet her needs as she transitions." Devastation swept over Truman like a heavy cloak. He had fought for every bit of this moment, and yet it was snatched away. The judge's words hung in the air, heavy with finality. "This court stands adjourned." The gavel struck, and the room erupted into hushed conversations, some sympathetic glances thrown his way, but they felt hollow. The Wells exchanged smug smiles, clearly pleased with their victory. Truman sat immobile for a moment, processing the news. It felt like an avalanche, burying him under the weight of hopelessness. Valor pressed against his leg, sensing his misery. Truman sank into his chair, overwhelmed. He couldn't lose Grace, not after everything they had fought through. Bonnie, who had been waiting quietly in the back, stepped forward, concern etched on her face. "Truman," she said softly, "don't give up. There has to be something we can do." He looked up, grief etched in his eyes. "What can we do?" he murmured, the ache of despair too heavy for him to shake off at the moment. "They have money, influence. What good is my love without support?" "Let me look into it," Bonnie said earnestly, determination sparking in her voice. "I have access to the hospital records. I might be able to find something that can help establish a bond or reveal any background about the circumstances surrounding Grace's abandonment. You need that to show the court you should be her guardian." Truman's heart raced at the thought of Bonnie fighting alongside him. "You really think that could help?" he asked, hope flickering like a candlelight. "I believe in you and Grace. I'll do everything I can," she assured him. As he walked out of the courtroom, valor at his side, Truman felt the fire of determination reigniting within him. He wouldn't give up. Not now, not ever. Not when Grace mattered most. Bonnie sat at her cluttered desk in the small hospital office, leafing through the medical files surrounding the case of baby Grace. Papers shuffled under her fingers, and the bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow in the room. Though the hospital was alive with patients and laughter, an air of worry enveloped her. Truman had described the little girl with so much love, and Bonnie could feel his heartache as if it were her own. She had seen many cases like Grace's in her years as a nurse, and it always touched her deeply. This case felt different, though. Truman was different, devoted to a child he barely knew, and she felt compelled to help him. With a sigh, Bonnie flipped to Grace's blood type results. It was just one line among many, but it was enough to make her pause. She squinted at the numbers, reading it twice to ensure she wasn't seeing things wrong. Baby Grace's blood type was a rare one, O negative, but more startling was the blood type listed for her mother, who had been discovered during the investigation, a positive. Bonnie leaned back, biting her lip. How could a mother and daughter have different blood types like that? It was curious. She was no geneticist, but she understood enough to know that such inconsistencies could mean something more significant. Was there a possibility that Grace wasn't merely abandoned, but that she had a more complicated background? Her heart raced as she hurriedly dug deeper into the records, searching for anything else that might explain this anomaly, frantically trying to override her fears of the unknown. Finally, after several moments of searching, she found what she hoped would be clues. There were no other blood tests available, but she noted the name of Grace's relative. That was the name of the late Truman's brother. A spark ignited in her mind, and it wasn't long before she realized the truth. This child might be connected to Truman far beyond what anyone could imagine. "Ah, there it is," she muttered quietly. She needed to speak to Truman immediately. Rising from her chair, Bonnie stepped into the hallway, searching for Truman's familiar silhouette. She found him sitting on a bench outside, staring into the distance while absently stroking Valor's fur. Even the dog sensed Truman's sadness and leaned against him, offering his quiet comfort. "Truman," she called softly, and he turned toward her, his hazel eyes cloudy with concern. "Can we talk for a moment?" "Sure, Bonnie," Truman replied, sitting up a little straighter, his brow furrowing. "Is there a problem?" The worry in his voice was unmistakable. "No, not a problem," Bonnie rushed to assure him. "In fact, I think I may have found something that can help us." "Help us?" Truman echoed, a flicker of hope flashing across his face. "You mean with Grace?" Bonnie nodded, walking closer to him. "Yes. Before I explain, I should tell you that some of this could change everything." She took a deep breath. "I found something strange in Grace's medical file. Her blood type is O negative, but her mother's blood type is A positive. That doesn't add up." "But isn't that normal? I mean, kids get different blood types from their parents all the time," Truman said, scratching his chin in confusion. "No, it's not that simple," Bonnie clarified gently. "There are possibilities here that we need to consider. It's rare for a child to have such a different blood type than the mother. If the mother was Grace's only parent, then, well, we might need to investigate further." Truman's eyes widened. "Are you saying Grace could have a different biological connection? Like a different family?" Bonnie nodded. "Yes, and that's not even the most shocking part. I found the name of the mother, at least the name connected to Grace. It's linked to your brother, Truman, the late brother." "What? No, that can't be right. My brother had a daughter?" Truman's voice was filled with disbelief. His mind raced as he processed the startling revelation. "I thought we lost that branch of the family forever." "We thought," Bonnie replied, her tone echoing empathy. "But if this checks out, Grace might be your grandniece, Truman. If you can prove this connection, it could be vital for your case. You'd have a real claim on her." Truman was silent for a moment. His heart raced, and he fumbled for words. Could it be? Grace, a part of his bloodline, a piece of his family lost and found again? The thought was overwhelming. "Has anyone even tried to look into her connections?" Truman asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Was my brother ever active in her life?" As they stood there, the weight of the news settled thickly around them. An unmarked territory of uncertainty stretched before both of them. Despite his grief and loss, Truman could feel hope flickering within him for the first time since he had found Grace. "No one had," Bonnie said firmly. "But we can dig," she continued with newfound determination. "We'll need to find out about her mother, who she is and what happened. We need Grace's birth records, anything we can uncover that ties you to her." Truman nodded, his spirits lifting as he absorbed Bonnie's enthusiasm. "Okay, let's do it," he agreed resolutely. "How do we start?" "The hospital records are a good starting point," Bonnie replied. "But we may need to reach out to anyone related to your brother or anyone who knew his family. I know this might take some time and effort, but I'll be here to help you every step of the way." Truman grinned, a combination of gratitude and renewed hope shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Bonnie. Really, thank you." With both of them now fueled by their new mission, they stood together, a sense of purpose igniting their hearts as they began to uncover the truth about Grace's past. They would not allow the bond that pulled them together to break again. In that moment, with Valor watching faithfully by their side, they were ready to fight with all their might for the chance to keep Grace where she belonged, by Truman's side. Truman and Bonnie stood side by side outside the courthouse, the heavy doors looming before them like the weight of their task. The air was crisp, a chill biting at their cheeks, but Truman felt a warmth in his heart. They had a plan. They had evidence that could change everything for little Grace. It should have been a moment of victory, but the reality was far more daunting. As they entered the courthouse, the familiar feeling of dread washed over Truman. Judge Caulfield was not just a formidable figure. He was a man of power, someone not easily swayed by emotions or heartfelt stories. They both knew that their journey would not be easy. The courtroom felt colder inside. the polished wood and stone shimmering under the flickering fluorescent lights. Truman's heart raced as they took their seats. His fingers tapped nervously against the table. Bonnie sat close beside him, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with some of his raw anxiety. "Just stay calm," Bonnie whispered, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "We have the evidence. It's real. We will present it, and the truth will shine through." Truman nodded, but had trouble finding his voice. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of lawyers gathering their papers and families waiting for their cases to be heard. The clamor felt overwhelming, yet Truman held on to his resolve. For Grace, he would stand tall. When Judge Caulfield walked in, the room fell silent. He nodded sharply, settling into his seat with an air of authority that commanded respect. "We will resume the case concerning the custody of Grace Ann Bell," he announced, glancing at the docket in front of him. Truman felt a lump in his throat. This was it, the moment they would present their findings. Bonnie, sitting beside him, looked determined as she prepared their documents. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady yet passionate, "we have uncovered new evidence regarding Grace's biological connection to Mr. Bell." Judge Caulfield raised an eyebrow, his expression neutral, but his demeanor skeptical. "And what would that evidence be?" Bonnie unfolded the printed documents with care, her fingers trembling slightly. "The blood type inconsistencies from the hospital records," she explained. "They indicate that Grace is actually related by blood to Mr. Bell, specifically as his grandniece." After a moment, the judge leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "This is all very speculative," he responded, dismissing their claim with a wave of his hand, as if it did not matter at all. "Unless you have hard proof, DNA tests, or signed affidavits, this evidence is not sufficient for this court." His voice was firm, and Truman felt his hope slip slightly. "But, Your Honor," Truman's voice cracked as he interjected, unable to keep the frustration from spilling out. He felt countless eyes boring into him. "We're trying to save Grace from being put up for adoption. She deserves a family who can love her." Judge Caulfield's gaze sharpened, his patience wearing thin. "Your emotional pleas don't change the facts of this case. Without proof, I cannot entertain this discussion any further." Truman watched as Bonnie's shoulders slumped, the fight in her shrinking. They had come so far, but it felt like they had taken a step backward instead. The judge brought down his gavel, signaling the end of the hearing, leaving Truman with a sense of despair. As they left the courthouse, the gray clouds overhead seemed to mirror Truman's mood. "What now?" he asked, desperation creeping into his tone. "Well," Bonnie exhaled, drawing in a deep breath, "we need to find Grace's mother. That's the key. She can help confirm everything if she's willing to testify." "Yeah," Truman nodded. "But where do we even start looking for her?" Bonnie quickly pulled out her phone, typing furiously as they walked. "I've heard whispers of a church-run shelter nearby. It's where many scared teens go when they're in trouble. It's possible we might find her there." Determined, Truman and Bonnie made their way to the shelter. It was a small building, painted a faded blue, nestled between towering trees. The sign above the door read, "Safe Haven." The air around the place was surprisingly serene, filled with the laughter of children playing nearby. As they approached, both Truman and Bonnie exchanged quick glances. They were two strangers looking for a young mother, but they needed to tread lightly. Who knew what stories lurked beneath the surface of fear engulfing that place? Inside, they were greeted by a kind-hearted receptionist who offered them warm coffee and stuffed animals for comfort. After introducing themselves, they explained their search for Grace's mother. The receptionist's eyes clouded with concern. "She's staying here under an alias," she said quietly. "She's scared of being found and judged. It's hard for her to trust anyone right now." "Can we see her?" Truman asked, his voice gentle. "We just want to talk." The receptionist hesitated. "I can't promise anything," she replied. "But wait here and I will see if she's willing." As the minutes ticked by, Truman felt his heart pound. What if they found her, but she wouldn't speak? What if she was too afraid? At that moment, Valor, his loyal dog, became animated, wagging his tail and lifting his head. The dog seemed to feel the anxious energy in the room. Truman reached down and scratched behind Valor's ears, seeking comfort in his familiar presence. Moments later, the receptionist returned, her expression softening. "She's in a safe room. You can talk to her, but please be kind. She's been through a lot." "Thank you," Bonnie replied gratefully. They followed the receptionist through a narrow hallway lined with photos of smiling children and warm messages of hope. Finally, they reached a small door, and she opened it slightly, gesturing for them to enter. Inside was a fragile girl, no older than 15. Her hair was dark and untidy, a mixture of disheveled curls framing her pale face. She sat in a dimly lit room, hugging her knees tightly to her chest. When she heard them, she looked up with wide, scared eyes. "Who are you?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Truman stepped forward gently, ready to reassure her. "My name is Truman, and this is Bonnie. We're here for you and your baby, Grace." The girl stiffened. Back in court, Judge Orrin Caulfield sat sternly at the front of the courtroom. His expression was rigid, and the air felt thick with tension. Truman stood, his heart racing, as he sought justice for Grace. The gavel banged down. "Your claims are irrelevant and legally void, Mr. Bell," the judge declared unwaveringly. "This court will not entertain any further discussion." Truman's shoulders sank as the judge's words landed like heavy stones. His hopes of bringing Grace home felt like they were slipping away, buried beneath layers of red tape and legal jargon. He exchanged glances with Bonnie, who stood beside him, her expression mirroring his own despair. They had worked so hard, and now this felt like a dead end. That same night, Bonnie received an urgent call from the receptionist at the shelter. "She's gone," the receptionist's voice trembled. "Grace's mother has disappeared." "What do you mean disappeared?" Bonnie's heart raced. "She can't just vanish." I think she was coerced or forcibly relocated. Nobody has seen her since this morning," the receptionist explained. The words lodged themselves in Bonnie's throat like shards of ice. This was dire. "I need to tell Truman." Bonnie quickly ended the call and found him back at his house, pacing with worry. When she shared the news, Truman's face transformed, a mix of anger and fear. "This is getting serious. They are trying to take Grace away before we can get any proof," Truman said, his voice trembling with rage. "We don't have much time." They both knew what the implications were. Someone wanted to ensure Grace was put into the hands of the adoptive couple too soon. The thought of her being whisked away without a chance for them to help made Truman's stomach churn with dread. "I have one lead," Truman said suddenly. "I overheard a discussion about the estate of the adoptive couple. It is suspected that the baby is being prepared for an illegal out-of-state transfer." Bonnie's eyes widened. "An illegal adoption?" she gasped. "We have to act fast, Truman." "Absolutely. We have to protect Grace no matter what," he replied with fierce determination. The weight of their mission pressed heavily on him, but he was resolute. With every ounce of strength, Truman and Bonnie planned their next steps. Enraged and desperate to take action, Truman grabbed his coat. "Let's go. We are not going to stand by while they take her." As they drove, the roads blurred past them, along with the comfort of daylight. They arrived at the spacious estate, its grandeur looming in front of them, exuding secrecy. Truman parked the car, and they stepped closer, each heartbeat echoing in their chests. "The sooner we find Grace's mother, the better," Bonnie said quietly, glancing around nervously. They crept to the side entrance, aware that they had to tread lightly. Anything could happen if they were caught. Truman's pulse quickened. He had never imagined he would find himself in this situation, driven by a fierce need to protect someone he loved deeply, despite only knowing her for a brief time. Grace was his family, and that meant everything. "We need to keep quiet," he reminded Bonnie, their breaths mingling in the cold air. Together, they steeled themselves, wanting nothing more than to find Grace and uncover the truth of what was happening behind those luxurious walls. Truman's heart raced as he approached the grand estate of the adoptive couple. The air felt electric with urgency. He had envisioned this moment countless times, every step stronger in his commitment to save Grace. The moonlight cast shadows on the carefully manicured lawn, almost mocking his resolve. He crouched low, moving stealthily toward the side entrance. Every creak of the floorboards beneath his feet sounded like a thunderous roar, but he pressed on, heart pounding like a drum. Inside, the elegant furnishings and lavish decorations also stirred a sense of unease within him. Truman knew this wasn't a home filled with love and care. It was a facade hiding darker intentions. He navigated through the house, desperately searching for Grace's cries. He could almost hear her, as though their hearts were connected in a secret way. Suddenly, a door swung open, and Truman froze. A member of the estate staff appeared, and before he knew it, Truman was caught. "Hey, what are you doing here?" the staffer shouted, eyes wide with shock. Panic surged as Truman turned to run, but was quickly tackled to the ground. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists and his heart sank. "Sir, you're under arrest for trespassing," the officer stated, pulling him roughly to his feet. Truman felt a wave of despair wash over him. He had come so close, yet failed at the last hurdle. Meanwhile, Bonnie paced her living room, the weight of the world pressing down on her. She received a frantic call from Truman's number, but when she picked up, all she could hear was a disconnected line. Fear twisted inside her, but she was not one to cower. She had to act. Her mind raced with knowing what she needed to do. Bonnie rushed to her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. She dug deep into the archives, searching for anything that could help Truman. As she sorted through files, she stumbled across footage from the hospital. There it was, Valor, the heroic dog, leading Truman to save Grace. She knew this was the moment she needed to share. With a few clicks, she uploaded the video to her social media accounts. Her heart raced as she typed a message explaining the situation. "This is Valor. He saved a baby girl named Grace from abandonment. The fight for her life isn't over. Please help." As the video went live, Bonnie raced to gather medical records proving Grace's connection to Truman. Each document she printed felt like a lifeline thrown out amidst turmoil. She worked feverishly, determined to unveil the dark truth surrounding the adoption. The clock was ticking, and she had to get this information out before it was too late. Within moments, the footage of Valor went viral. Thousands of views poured in, comments filled with outrage, and every retweet expanded the reach. The media caught wind of the story, flooding news feeds with the tale of a baby saved by a dog and the plight of a desperate uncle fighting for his family. Bonnie felt a swell of hope, knowing they had sparked enough interest to cause a stir. In the courthouse, the pressure mounted. Judge Caulfield was forced to notice the growing public outrage. He was met with phone calls from the media, and he could sense the heat intensifying as the case began to bubble back to the surface. The court had no choice but to pause the adoption process and reopen Grace's case under new judicial review. Back in the holding cell, Truman's spirits lifted when he learned from an officer that news about him and Grace had spread like wildfire. He thought about Bonnie, fiercely fighting for the truth he never thought he could achieve alone. He remembered Valor's soft fur, the way he had bravely led the path to Grace. Truman clenched his jaw, determination flowing through his veins. This was far from over. The battle for Grace was just beginning, but this time, they wouldn't fight alone. The tide was turning, and his family would not be broken. The thought filled him with strength, ready to face whatever came next. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of anticipation and anxiety as the new judge entered, a striking change from Judge Orrin Caulfield. This judge was known for fairness and a deep understanding of safeguarding the vulnerable. With a calm demeanor, she glanced around the packed room, her gaze settling upon Truman and Bonnie. They both felt a spark of hope, something they thought had been extinguished forever. Grace's mother was brought in under protective custody, flanked by law enforcement officers. She looked terrified, yet resilient, her eyes darting around the room nervously. Truman's heart ached for her. They all shared so much pain, so many scars. This moment was monumental, a chance for her to share her truth. She took a deep breath, appearing small in the vastness of the courtroom, yet Truman sensed an inner strength growing within her. When the time came for her to testify, a hush fell over the room. The new judge encouraged her gently, saying, "You're safe here. Please tell us what you want to share." With trembling hands, Grace's mother spoke, her voice low but steady. "I was scared of judgment and shame," she began, casting a nervous glance at the attorney representing the adoptive couple. This soft admission sent ripples through the audience. Truman could see the tension in Bonnie's shoulders ease just a bit as Grace's mother continued. "I was pressured to keep quiet. People told me that I would ruin lives if I spoke up, but I was lost, and I didn't know who to trust." Each word she shared held the weight of her journey, each fragment of her story revealing the manipulation she had faced. In that quiet yet powerful moment, she described how Truman and Bonnie reached out to her, exuding warmth and sincerity. "They didn't judge me. They treated me like family, even when I felt utterly alone," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I couldn't find a way to speak up, but they did everything they could to protect me and my baby." The sincerity in her voice connected with everyone in the room. As she spoke about Judge Caulfield and the adoptive couple, the tension skyrocketed. "I witnessed them manipulating the system, bending the rules to get what they wanted, no matter the cost. They cared only about their own status." Gasps filled the courtroom, disbelief etched across the faces of people who once trusted the system. The new judge listened intently, taking in every word. Truman could hardly breathe as he felt the tide shifting. Grace's mother, with her newfound strength, was unveiling the truth that had made them all tremble in fear. When she finished, the silence felt almost tangible. The new judge looked even more determined, her brow furrowed in deep thought. "Thank you for your bravery," she said. "Your testimony will change everything." In the back of the courtroom, whispers of shock and disbelief flooded in response to the exposé. The ambiance shifted from desperation and sadness into an energy charged with hope and agitation. And just like that, the spotlight turned fiercely onto Judge Caulfield. Just after the testimony, it was announced that Judge Caulfield would be put under investigation and suspended from the bench. It felt like the first rays of dawn breaking after a long, cold night. Truman's heart swelled with hope, his eyes shimmering with tears of relief. They had lifted the veil of corruption, and now freedom lay in reach. With Grace's mother's courage shining like a beacon in the dim room, it was clear that the fight was far from over. But now it was fueled by truth and unity. The day dawned bright and hopeful, casting golden rays across the small town of Oakwood. News of the courtroom testimony had spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of optimism in the hearts of many. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as people flocked to the courthouse, waiting to hear the outcome of the ongoing battle for little Grace. Inside the courthouse, Truman Bell sat nervously on a hard wooden bench, his heart racing. He glanced at Valor, who lay placidly at his feet, the aging dog providing a sense of calm in the chaotic environment. The golden retriever, with his soft fur glistening in the sun, had been along for every twist and turn of this emotionally charged journey. Valor was more than a service dog. He had become a symbol of hope and protection. Truman felt a jumble of emotions surge within him. It had been a long, hard fight. The courtroom drama had taken a toll, amplifying the grief he had carried since losing his wife. Yet now, there was a chance for healing. There was a chance to become a father, again. As the clock ticked closer to the hour, Judge Pamela Waters entered the room, and a hush fell over the crowd. This was a new beginning. For many, it felt like the curtain was finally lifting on the shadow that had been cast over their lives. With a composed yet determined expression, Judge Waters took her seat and scanned the courtroom. "Today, "We are here to make a decision regarding the custody of Grace," she announced, her voice steady. Truman felt his heart race anew. Grace, his grandniece, a miracle born from tragedy, a miracle he was desperate to secure in his arms. After careful review of the evidence and testimonies presented, I have reached a conclusion. Truman held his breath, praying for the miracle he so dearly desired. He caught Bonnie's eye in the front row. Her chin lifted in quiet confidence, her eyes filled with support, urging him to stand strong. "Judge Orrin Caulfield is hereby formally disbarred," Judge Waters declared, her voice ringing with authority. Truman could hardly believe his ears. Gasps rippled through the courtroom like the breeze outside, echoing a mix of shock and relief. The verdict whispered through the crowd. Justice had prevailed. "Furthermore," continued Judge Waters, "the adoption proceedings for Grace, initiated by the previous court, are overturned." A wave of emotions crashed over Truman as those words sank in. Overturned. It was a word that signaled the dawning of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with hope. The judge paused, allowing the news to settle. "Based on the new evidence, including the testimony from Grace's mother, I am awarding permanent guardianship of Grace to Truman Bell." A wave of relief washed over Truman. He felt buoyed, as if he could float right off that bench. Tears sprung to his eyes as the weight of the world lifted from his shoulders. "Thank you," he whispered, not entirely sure if he was speaking to Judge Waters or the universe itself. Bonnie stood, her eyes gleaming with joy. Truman could see her heart soar. She had been their rock, tirelessly fighting for what was right, and she seemed to glow brighter than the morning sun. In the midst of the crowd, people erupted into applause, cheers, and shouts of celebration. Later, in the council chamber, Judge Waters turned her attention to Bonnie. "With your integrity and courage in this case, I'd like to offer you the lead role in the county's Child Welfare Department. You have demonstrated what it means to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves," she said warmly, extending her hand toward Bonnie. Bonnie's face lit up with surprise. "I thank you. This means so much." "Your work will ensure that families like Truman's will never have to face such trials again," the judge affirmed. Meanwhile, Truman felt a rush of gratitude for both Bonnie and Valor. The dog had been an unwavering protector, guarding him just as fiercely as he had protected Grace. With a soft smile, he imagined an idyllic home filled with laughter and warmth. When the courtroom cleared, Truman and Bonnie found a quiet corner. The air was thick with unspoken emotions. They exchanged glances, both realizing how far they had come together. The bond they had formed felt stronger than any words could express. "We did it," Truman said, a soft smile breaking on his face. "Thank you for standing by me." Bonnie nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "We fought for her. For both of you." In that moment, everything shifted. Their hard work had not only secured a future for Grace, but it had also deepened their connection in an unexpected way. They shared a lingering gaze. There was a spark, a new beginning blossoming right before them. Valor nudged Truman's leg, drawing him out of the moment, his loyal presence reminding him that while their lives were changing, their love, strength, and resilience would carry them forward. As he went to kneel beside Valor, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something profound, a journey built on hope, love, and newfound family. It was a typical day, but for the first time in a long while, Truman felt the dawn of joy breaking on the horizon of their lives. Months had passed since the courtroom battles that had reshaped their lives. Truman, Bonnie, and Grace formed an unconventional but deeply real family. The little house in rural Kentucky, once filled with silence and echoes of grief, now burst with laughter and love. Walls adorned with family photos showed moments frozen in time. Grace grinning as she played with Valor, Bonnie's gentle praise, and Truman's warm fatherly embrace. On a bright morning, the sun peeked over the trees, casting a golden hue on the porch. Truman sat in his weathered rocking chair, taking a moment to breathe in the crisp air, full of promise. Valor lay nearby, the loyal dog watching over the family with his wise, soulful eyes. As the warm rays slowly warmed the porch, Truman's heart swelled with gratitude. The scars from the past still lingered, but they no longer defined him. Healing had taken root, and hope blossomed anew. Grace, now a curious toddler with joy in her chubby cheeks, sat on the cool wooden floor, her tiny fingers exploring everything within reach. She gazed at Truman, her granduncle, her eyes sparkling with mischief. With determination spilling across her little face, she took her first steps. Bonnie, hovering nearby, gasped softly and held her breath for a moment, captivated by the sight. "Look at her go, Truman!" Her voice was filled with excitement. Truman, noticing her struggling stance, leaned forward, his heart pounding with encouragement. "You can do it, sweetheart!" He spread his arms wide, summoning her with love. "Come on, Grace. Just a little more." With a little wobble, Grace stepped forward, her tiny feet lifting off one by one, and then she was walking toward him, arms reaching high as if to embrace the world. Valor, sensing the moment, lifted his head with soft barks of approval, his tail thumping against the porch. The dog sensed the joy radiating from them, and in that moment, he felt a new strength, a gentle reminder of his role in this newly formed family. Truman's chest swelled with pride. "That's it! You're doing it!" The joy in his voice wrapped around the little girl like a warm hug as she stumbled forward, laughter spilling from her lips. To see Grace take those steps toward him instantly banished any lingering shadows of doubt from his heart. Bonnie wiped a happy tear from her cheek, witnessing the pure magic of the moment. It all felt perfect, the three of them, intertwined in the laughter and warmth of their little home. They had fought hard for this sweet little life, and now it overflowed with love. When Grace fell into Truman's waiting arms, moments turned into cherished memories. He lifted her up and kissed her cheek. Her giggles felt like music, drowning out any remnants of heartache. Bonnie joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, forming a tight circle of love and unity. In the distance, the sun continued to rise, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. It felt like a new beginning was dawning, a testament to their love and sacrifice. Scars remained, but they didn't bear the weight they once did. Instead, those scars served as reminders of how far they had come, the healing they had embraced, and the joy they found in one another. With the sun rising and hearts intertwined, Truman, Bonnie, and Grace stood together on the porch, ready to face whatever came next as a family. Outro. Thank you for watching. If even one moment stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow with another story that speaks to the heart.